The appointed times, Jesus in the feasts of Israel, Tabernacles, on this day of discovery.
The Feast of Tabernacles, or Booths, is celebrated each fall by Jewish people around the world. Jerusalem and its temple has been the focus of all 7 of the Feasts of Israel since the days of King Solomon. Today, the Muslim shrine, the Dome of the Rock, occupies that site. Avner Bosky lives here in Israel and teaches the Bible. He's also a licensed guide. Mike Brown is a Hebrew scholar and hosts a national radio program. I'm Michael Ray Delmick, a professor of Jewish studies and a national radio Bible teacher. We all know the excitement of home for the holidays, the gathering of the family when we're going to have a great party and celebrate often what God has done for us and also celebrate the joy of being with each other. And that is what the fall feasts of Israel, particularly Tabernacles, represents. It was the time when everyone celebrated and came home for the holidays. But instead of going to a home, everyone came to Jerusalem, where we're at.
And they actually probably came right up these steps. They did. They came right up these steps where we're sitting, and they went right up to the Temple Mount right behind us. All of Israel came right through this way. Also, Jesus and his apostles came right up these steps for the great fall feasts.
John chapter 1, verse 14, if we think about the image of tabernacling, it says that the Word became flesh and tabernacled among us. In fact, the Greek word that John uses is the same word that was used in the Jewish Greek translation of the Old Testament called the Septuagint a couple hundred years before Jesus. It means he literally pitched his tent among us. So in a unique way, God tabernacles among us, and that's part of the imagery.
He boothed among us. God came and dwelt with us like we're dwelling in a booth with him together.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then what about, there's the water.
The water is very significant because in Judaism, there was a thing called the water libation ceremony, that we draw waters from the wells of salvation, and they would bring water up from the pool of Siloam up here to the Temple Mount above us, and on the altar they would pour the water, symbolizing that one day the knowledge of the Lord will cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. And because of that water libation, it's Jesus in the midst of the festival of Tabernacles, of booths.
John 7, right?
John 7, he says, anyone that comes to me, the rivers of living water will come forth from his innermost being. And he is saying the living waters that you need is not from a libation, not from the pool of Siloam. It comes from me, and I will give it to you, and it will pour forth. And then, of course, John tells us he referred this to the Holy Spirit that would come upon those who followed him.
We're looking at the city of David, ancient Jerusalem from 2,000 years ago. And this is where the priests would have come for the Feast of Tabernacles to gather water from the pool of Siloam. That's at the very foot of the city of David, that oblong pool, with thousands and thousands of people gathered together, great celebration, dancers, jugglers even. And they would take that water up all the way up the city of David, very steep hill, to the Temple Mount and pour it out there in a ceremony of the drawing of water. And now I'd like to show you what this area looks like today. We're standing in a rectangle-shaped pool called the Pool of Siloam. It's right at the very bottom of the Kidron Valley in the city of David. This is where the water comes from, which would have been used in the ceremonies of the Feast of Tabernacles. The pool would have gone out this way where it's unexcavated right now. It would have been kind of big, and there were 3 sets of 5 steps coming down over here. This is where everyone would have gathered and where you would have had these huge celebrations and dancing, celebrating the giving of water in the Feast of Tabernacles.
So you've got this image, it's a big procession, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a big event.
Huge.
Drawing of the water, and then
Jugglers, torch
so
throwers.
this is a bigger event than we could just picture.
And Jesus says this in the midst of
if
it.
anyone's thirsty, let him come to
me.
me and drink.
So he's saying that he is the fulfillment of the spiritual blessing of this Feast of Tabernacles.
Amazingly, people start saying, well, could this one be the Messiah? That's the immediate response to what he says, because they know that he's declaring that he is the Messiah, the one who's going to come and who will give the knowledge of the Lord to the whole world.
And then there's a third aspect
well,
there.
there's the light. Let's not forget the
Okay,
light.
the light, that's also true.
There was a light ceremony, a torch ceremony here on the Temple Mount. And it got bigger and bigger every day, so that on the last day of the feast, the great Hosanna, the super duper celebration, there would be so many torches on the Temple Mount that they said, according to the rabbinic literature, that you could see the light of the temple all the way far away in Galilee. That's how bright it was.